Hey, warm and friendly hello! Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast today as we're going to be joined in a few short minutes by Mike Randle. He does great work at FTN Network and FTN Bets. We're going to chat with him about what he's made out of the offseason thus far. We're going to be talking with him a little bit about the players that we've been seeing moving, and we're going to put a little bit of a bow around this past season as well, how top heavy it was, if this is a sign of things to come, if he feels like this was a little bit of a one-off or a little bit between A and B as well. We're going to have a great chat here, and as I've been doing on this podcast quite a bit, we're going to do another 2-segment podcast where we have a guest interview and then I recap the news and notes of college basketball over the last 24 hours. I'll do this a lot when I don't get in Twitter/X questions. I will reserve a first segment for anything that you want me to dive in depth on a little bit more. Recognize that some of you are a little bit tired of college basketball right now, especially with there being north of 2,150 players in the transfer portal, and that's my job to help you be able to keep up with all of these because it is very, very difficult. As a matter of fact, as I refresh, 2,169 players in the transfer, and very, very nice in terms of the last number, so there's that aspect of things. But you know what, I do think that we've got ourselves a lot to be able to say for this offseason. Just be mindful that these teams that we're going to be seeing in March in 2026 in the NCAA tournament, these teams that are going to be able to make these big runs, they're being built right now. So I will be with you guys every single day here in the offseason to get you guys prepared for what is going to be an amazing season, and you're always prepared with Edge Boost. Edge Boost, they do a tremendous job of making sure that you have access to all the funds that you want over at edgeboost.bet. If you utilize the promo code of Greg, G-R-E-G, you get a dollar for dollar match on your first $25 deposit. That would be the promo code of G-R-E-G, and if you ever do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you, for this podcast, you have one of two ways to be able to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at GUnit_81. Keep in mind, letters CM, they mean does not matter. So as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is via an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. And really didn't get in any Twitter/X questions today, so let's just dive into it with Mike. He does tremendous work over at FTN Network, FTN Bets on so many different fronts. He's amazing on college basketball, but also doing a great job on the baseball front, also doing amazing work on the NFL. And as we know, the draft is going to be coming up sooner rather than later. You're able to follow him on Twitter/X at RandleRant altogether. And Mike, it's great to get you aboard. Thank you.
Greg, it's great to be with you. What a fantastic Final Four, one of the best ones ever. Great championship game. Kudos to Florida cutting down the nets. Just a wonderful, wonderful San Antonio experience.
Oh, it was amazing, and that leads me into my first question. What we saw this year was obviously a lot of chalk, with 4 1 seeds in the Final Four, Florida being able to get the job done. Do you think that that's a sign of things to come, or do you think that that was a little bit more of a one-off with things being so top-heavy and so chalky?
You know, you mentioned the NFL draft when you started, so I'm going to couch this as I want to be careful. I don't want to overreact, knee-jerk reaction to what we saw. Now, look, I think this would have been one of the best tournaments ever if we simply had a couple upsets. I mean, I can even make an argument if Colorado State gets home there against Maryland, people probably think about it a lot differently. That being said, if this does continue and we see the gap grow, I think, Greg, where we're headed is maybe for an elite sort of top 16, if you will, NCAA tournament and maybe splitting it. But that would be only if this continues for several years. I mean, we could be back, Greg, next year to upsets. We could have a 16 beat a 1. I don't think we can draw the conclusion based off of 1 year, but because of name, image, and likeness, because of the teams being willing to spend, I'm curious to see if the upsets do get reduced, because the NCAA tournament without upsets is not March Madness. It's not March Madness. It's a great basketball tournament, but it's not March Madness. So let's see over the next couple of years, and then I'll draw a conclusion. I'm not ready to say it just yet, but my mind did start racing that if this does continue and we don't see as many upsets anymore because the discrepancy is so big, maybe we move to 2 separate tournaments, small school tournament, top 16, something like that.
Yep, certainly. I would probably not want to see like 20 crown events, to say the least. So hopefully we can get a little bit more of an equilibrium We don't need 4 16 seeds making it to the Final Four. We don't necessarily need 4 1 seeds making it to the Final Four as well. And I think that that's a very reasonable approach to take to it. And as we know, a big reason why everything that we saw this March happened was because of everything that happened in the transfer portal. And now we're back into the offseason. And just what do you take a look at with regards to the month of April? Because I think that this is one of the toughest months in general to be able to gauge in terms of college basketball, mainly because you got so many guys committing to so many different places that it's wildfire. Right when you think that you're caught up, 35 other guys just entered into the transfer portal.
Yeah, really impressed so far at what Dusty May has done at Michigan. I love Dusty May from his Florida Atlantic days. I did not think they were going to have as much success initially as they did this year. Really did an outstanding job, and he attacked it with vigor. Very impressive. So there's still players out there, but Greg, we talked the last couple of years about not just adding players, but adding the right type of players to your team. One of the biggest signings that has gone under the radar, and I know you talked about it, but people nationally have not, is Donovan Dent going to UCLA, because Mick Cronin just needs scoring. You know he can coach defense. And bringing Dent over there, those are the type of transfer portal additions that I love. I don't need 4 or 5 guys. I need the right guys. And someone like Donovan Dent going from New Mexico to UCLA is a huge signing for Mick Cronin, who, if we think, Greg, all we think about Mick Cronin this year was the diatribe about the travel with the Big Ten. But that guy can coach. And bringing in a scorer like that is something he really has not had much of during his career.
Yep, absolutely. And I'm so glad that you mentioned Michigan. It feels like they're going to have a whole bunch of size. And the Big Ten in general, it just feels like they're trying to up their game a little bit more because, as we know, the last team to be able to win a title in the Big Ten was the Flintstones of Michigan State. That Maryland title does not count, by the way, if you're looking at the Big Ten. They were in the ACC at the time. But how do you take a look at what we've been getting in the Big Ten? Because I do feel like this was one of the slowest conferences to be able to adapt to the transfer portal. And now we're starting to see a lot of these teams step up to the plate.
Yeah, they've been able to have the high floor, but the low ceiling. That's the issue. And I am curious to see how much they can make a run. It's a shame. Steve Peichel from Rutgers is an outstanding basketball coach, but clearly he did not manage name, image, and likeness well this last year. To have 2 players who are probably, Greg, in Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper going in the top 5 of the NBA draft and not even make the tournament means you did not balance.
Didn't even sniff it.
Didn't even sniff it. And it's a shame. He's an excellent coach. He revitalized Rutgers. Trust me, I know no one was at those games. He's done a wonderful job, but this has really been a struggle. And it just shows you have to add the right type of guys. And now if you end up looking at players like Lathan Somerville, really good, aggressive rebounder, athletic guy, he's now headed to Washington. So I think the key with the Big Ten, led by Dusty May now, obviously, and Indiana's getting involved with DeVries a little bit, is to get the right type of players to come in. Mike Woodson was not doing the right thing by just getting big men to come in. That's not going to work. But adding the right players is critical. And if they can do that, Braden Smith coming back for Purdue now is big. They can make a run and they can make a way all the way to the championship and win it and bring that title home for the first one since, of course, Izzo had his last title. But, Purdue made it. They got by Tennessee. That was a tough Tennessee team 2 years ago in the SEC with Dalton Connect. So I think they can do it. But they have to attack the transfer portal and get the right players in. And I think they're starting to see that, led by Dusty May, what he's doing in Michigan.
Yep, I think that he's doing it well. And Illinois, I feel like, has been ahead of the curve as well. They've certainly been a team has went for it in the transfer portal, brought in the international amount of mystery this season as well. So that's something that I have absolutely loved, as Mike Randle, who does such tremendous work over at FTN Network at FTN Bets, is joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And how much do you think teams are going to learn from what you pointed out with Rutgers? And I'm so glad that you mentioned Somerville is transferring on over to Washington. But for lack of a better term, like some of the things that Washington did last season, where they paid one guy in Great Osborne and they didn't have much else. And I feel like there's a lot of teams that they can take some, shall we say, cautionary lessons from these teams that they go all in on 1 or 2 guys. And I feel like in this day and age, a lot of teams are finding out that it's a team that wins and not just 1 or 2 individuals.
That is what is giving me hope about the NCAA tournament just having 1 year where there really weren't many upsets. Because I do think in the end it does matter. I go back in the NBA to the early 2000s when I saw a Piston team sweep the Lakers 4-0 with Shaq and Kobe and Karl Malone and that whole team. So I still want to believe that it makes a difference. You have to add the right type of players. You've seen a lot of coaches leave, but you've seen ones like Pitino has stayed. And what it comes down to is they feel that it's a different sort of challenge. It's about building your roster, being more of a GM, and adding the right type of players. RJ Lewis leaving is really a shame. I was at Madison Square Garden for the Big East Awards, the Big East tournament. I mean, Pitino couldn't be any more positive about RJ Lewis. But quite frankly, Greg, he had a game which Pitino recognized he just wasn't there. He was one of those games where he was just pushing and pressing and not doing the right things, and he sat him down. Lewis is not going to understand that. He's never going to come back. But Pitino is already reloading. Pitino has embraced what he has to do in order to succeed, and teams have to do it as well. Another team that is embracing it is Pat Kelsey at Louisville. I mean, what an incredible job Pat Kelsey did. If he didn't lose the big man earlier this year, who I believe came up from South Florida, the big man, I forget his name right now. If they didn't lose him to injury earlier in the year, they would have been even better than they were. He's already embraced it now. UMass is still kicking themselves that Kelsey was basically there and then he backed out of the press conference the day of. But those sort of coaches are going to make a difference. It's not that coaching is different. It's just changed. So embracing the right type of transfers is going to be critical. You cannot just accumulate 2 or 3 stars. You saw it with Rutgers. Steve Peichel, great coach, didn't work this year.
Yep, and you were thinking of Kashawn Pryor in terms of the big man that they were missing. Yep, I'm right there with you. And I do think that it's so interesting to take a look at these coaching hires as well, because you mentioned it. Dusty May is going into season number 2 at Michigan. He's got things going in the right direction. Well, you couldn't go any further down than our good friend the Pain Train. I think that you and me might have been able to do a better job at Louisville those last 2 seasons, but I mean, certainly with what Pat Kelsey was able to do, that was a good hire as well. And how do you take a look at these guys that have been hired on this cycle? Because we are noticing that things are getting younger and younger in terms of power conference level, and I do think that it's good that these schools like a Indiana, like an Iowa, they look to guys that had just recently been coaching at the non-Division I level, at the junior college level, and have been really coaching at those lower ranks.
I'll tell you, the instinct I had that Pat Kelsey, the initial response where I knew Pat Kelsey was going the right direction, as soon as he gets to campus, he's walking around, you're seeing him engaging social media, taking videos of him going into his desk in his office the first day. That stuff matters. That stuff resonates with younger players today. And I remember seeing him do, and I thought back to Kelvin Sampson, which of course you saw with Houston when he first went down to Houston. I was 2013, whatever it was, walking around campus, asking kids, begging them with the megaphone in the middle of the cafeteria to please come to the game. You have to do that sort of thing, and it resonates. And then once you build it, you build a very loyal fan base. He's brought in Adrian Woolley from Kennesaw State, Ryan Conwell from Xavier, and Isaac McNeely from Virginia. I mean, you can see shooter, driver, good ball handling. That's what they have to do. So you have to embrace social media, regardless of your age. You have to be active. You have to be willing to go out there, engage with younger students and bring them in, and then embrace the name, image, and likeness. You can't shun it. You can't be frustrated with it. You have to embrace it. And if you do that, all that stuff goes away, Greg. You end up getting on the court. It's still about the X's and O's, which these guys are as good as anyone.
Yep, they certainly are. And just like you are as good as anyone, as we do have Mike Randle, who does such great work over at FTN Network and FTN Bets, joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And are there any moves in particular with regards to coaches that you just thought were home run hires? Because I was mentioning it, these guys that had some non-Division I experience, like I think that Ben McCollum going on over to Iowa was absolutely tremendous for them. And I do think that Mr. Darren DeVries heading on over to Indiana, that's going to be able to work out for them as well. I feel like those are 2 notable ones, but are there a few that are really standing out to you? Because I think that those are the hires that are going to work a little bit more than, say, perhaps a Mike Bibby over at Sacramento State, where he might have a big name, but isn't necessarily familiar with the grind of the mid-major ranks.
Yeah, I'll give you good and bad. I am not a Kevin Willard guy. I recognize that Kevin Willard, and I was at Boston College when Al Skinner was there. There are certain coaches, Greg, who can get you from nowhere to good, but can't get you from good to great. And so Kevin Willard did a nice job with Maryland this year. But I'll ask you this. If Maryland lost to Colorado State, with all the prospects that they had, and of course the incredible freshman on the interior, Derek Queen, would we be as positive about Kevin Willard as they are? So him going to Villanova, I think they'll be okay. I don't think they'll be great. I still think Sean Miller can coach. I'm curious to see what's going to happen in Texas. And you know I like Xavier go to the Final Four. Well, if I knew Sean Miller had 1 foot out the door, Xavier probably would have picked them. But Texas has been a spot where coaches go and struggle. Of course, Rick Barnes, who everyone likes to sort of downplay, was able to get to a Final Four there. I'm curious because Sean Miller is the best coach they've had in a long time. Shaka Smart was great, but wasn't ready to embrace it like Sean Miller is going to. Buzz Williams is great. Everyone makes fun of Buzz Williams going to Maryland. Buzz Williams has a belief, and you heard, I think Gary Parrish talk about this. He believes after 6 years, the fan base gets tired of you. They stop looking at what you did before you got there and start looking at comparing to what you've done since you've gotten there. So his idea that he leaves every 6 years, whether it's Virginia Tech or Marquette or Texas A&M and now Maryland, it is done by design. So I expect him to win no problem. Ben McCollum going to Iowa. I think it was time for Frank McCaffrey to go. Again, type of coach who goes from bad and brings you to good, but not good to great. Ben McCollum just did a superior job with Drake. I can't see him failing in Iowa when he was able to do really well at Drake with Division II players the entire time. I think Richard Pitino, Xavier's going to be strong, and I have long been, you know this, a huge fan of Nico Medved. I think Nico Medved going back to Minnesota, he knows that he's going to a Big Ten. Like you mentioned when we started this conversation, that's kind of open to a certain extent. He's going to make an immediate impact there for the Golden Gophers. He is a great X's and O's coach. Give him some name, image, and likeness money. Give him some recruits. He's going to win for sure.
And I believe that he's a Minnesota graduate as well. So
yes,
that was a very good tie-in. Probably to the favor of Minnesota, because I don't know if they land him otherwise, and that, I agree with you, that was a tremendous hire, and just like it was tremendous to be able to get you aboard, Mike. You're doing such a great job over at FTN Network, FTN Bets, taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball, getting set for all the action on the diamond, as that's back in our lives, the NFL draft, that's going to be going down in the next few weeks as well, so you're a man that wears very many ads, you do so also well, so love to get people at home, know it's all on tap for you, and now people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yeah, guys, come over to ftnfantasy.com. We'll have a live blog analyzing the picks. Last year, Greg, very excited. Love the draft because it's just research here for a nerd like me who loves to get into the weeds. Started 7 for 7 with the picks, accurate to the first top 7 teams. But of course, Greg, when Michael Penix got drafted to the Atlanta Falcons, already had Kirk
Little
Cousins.
shocker.
Everything went downhill from there. But we're excited. Come on over FTN Fantasy. We'll have you covered with shorts and everything for the NFL draft. Can't wait to get started here. NBA playoffs, of course, already underway tonight with the Hawks and the Magic.
Yeah, I don't know if Michael Penix knew that Michael Penix was going to be drafted in that position, so that was intriguing to say the least, and it's always a lot of fun to be able to chat with Mike. He does such a great job covering this great game of college basketball, and every single time he joins me, he lends great insight. So big thanks to Mike for joining me on Coast to Coast Superstar, part of the VSiN Family Podcast, and coming next, let's give you a recap of the news and notes that we saw in college basketball on Tuesday. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by Mike Randle. He does an incredible job over at FTN Network and FTN Bets, taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. Every single time he joins me, he lends such great insight. So big thanks to Mike for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you a recap of the news and notes that we saw in college basketball on Tuesday. Big time pickup for Indiana and what Darren DeVries is going to be looking to do over there. Seems like he's wanting to go a little bit more up-tempo with regards to his system rather than what we saw over at West Virginia last season, as Lamar Wilkerson, he is going to be heading on over to Indiana. Now, Sam Houston State left a lot to be desired with regards to our defense, but this guy was able to supply 20.5 points, 4 boards per contest. He's one of the better three-point shooters that you're going to find in all of college basketball. Shot 45% from three-point range last season. I know that he was one of the more highly coveted guys in the transfer portal, to say the least. I am not sure what the NIL bag that he was able to get is, but that said, I'm sure that it was pretty darn solid in this one. And for Indiana, it's certainly a program that is going to be looking to hit the ground running, as obviously Tucker DeVries going to be heading over there. Reed Bailey, Connor Enright, they're joining the fold as well. So Indiana already a pretty nice transfer haul, so do have to like to see that. Blake Ewan, he was actually the number 1 rated junior college transfer according to JUCORecruiting.com 2 off seasons ago in 2024. He's decided that he's going to be going to Arkansas. Was rock solid, got better as the season went along, 14 points, 7.5 boards, actually began his career out there at Ole Miss before he went down to the junior college level, but I think that that's going to be big for an Arkansas team that it felt like from time to time they were just a little bit outgunned down low. Now, I feel like that was more or less due to injuries because for darn near everyone got hurt for Arkansas in that front court towards the beginning part of the season. But that said, I think that he's going to be able to come in. He's going to be able to be a nice, shall we say, rim protector. He's going to be able to do a nice job on the glass. And for Arkansas, you know that this team is going to be very far from done in the transfer portal, as I do think that John Calipari is going to be looking to pick up quite a few of these guys. This is really the main pickup along Nick Pringle thus far, but I do feel like more is going to be to come for Arkansas. More is probably going to be to come for this program, but Jacob Meyer is a pickup for them them that I think is rock solid. Comes on over from UAB, able to average 9 points per contest last season out there in the Big East. 2 seasons ago when he was over at Coastal Carolina, was a little bit of a do-it-all guy at 6'2", 15.5 points, 5 boards, 2.5 assists. Never going to be an amazing three-point shooter, but is a capable three-point shooter, so I do like that pickup for them. I also do like this pickup as well, the fact that Keyshawn Murphy is going to be adding on over to Auburn. They already picked up Keyshawn Hall, so you've got a pair of Keyshawns that are going to be adding on over to Auburn, but last season down low, a little bit over a block, 11.5 points, 7.5 rebounds per game. He should be able to do a rock-solid job down low. As we know, G&I Broom now being out of eligibility, that leaves them a little bit of a horse-apiece situation, but this is a really good pickup for them, and I think that he's going to be able to make an impact right away. Lane Taylor, he last season was over at Central Arkansas, and he was solid in the 20 games that he actually played. 3.5 boards, 3.5 assists, 17.5 points per contest, mid-30s three-point shooter. He's decided that he's going to be going to Murray State. Murray State, a really productive last 48 or so hours. Feels like they're doing a nice job being able to form some inroads. Maybe they got a little bit of their NIL bag on, but that's it for Murray State. They've got quite a few guys that are going to be coming in. Mason Miller was a really good, sharp three-point shooter when he was over at Creighton. Problem was, he just saw no time whatsoever off the bench for Creighton, so that was a little bit of an issue for them, but that said, he's going to be heading on over there. You've got a guy in Javon Jackson who's coming over from UIC. He committed over the last 48 or so hours. Frederick King, who I always felt like deserved more minutes over at Creighton. He's going to be able to give them a little bit of a low post presence. KJ Tenner, who is able to see a few minutes over at West Virginia as well. So, I mean, they're forming a nice roster over there. I like what's being built with Murray State right now. I'm liking this as well. The fact that Jermichael Stillwell continuing the UW-Milwaukee to Central Florida, shall we say, pipeline. As for Stillwell, he was one of the best rebounders in all of college basketball. 13 points, 10.5 boards, a little bit over steal per contest. Shot a tad over 30% from three-point range. Not going to say that he's amazing at being able to pop it from three at 6'8", but that said, he's going to be joining his teammate in Themis Folks, who was one of the better facilitators at the mid-major level in all of college basketball last season. I think that they are going to be able to form a very nice pairing there. Cam Kraft, he was a crafty three-point shooter last season. Shot 43% from three-point range. He's going to be adding on over to Georgia Tech. This is a good pickup for them, as Georgia Tech, they've been a, shall we say, shaky three-point shooting team over their first 3 seasons with Damon Stoudemire, who I think has done actually a pretty solid job with his Georgia Tech team. For Georgia Tech, it's been a little bit slow going for them here at the beginning of the transfer portal cycle, but I mean, this is a relatively nice pickup for them. Do have to think that they are far from done in terms of being able to add guys, and I do think that that's a nice first step for them. You've got Jasper Floyd, who's also going to be heading on over to West Virginia. We are noticing that a lot of these guys that were at North Texas last year, they're heading on over, and I thought that Floyd was going to be one of those guys. 9 points, 4 assists, 3 rebounds, began his career at Fairfield, but just a really nice stat sheet suffer in general. Now, you haven't had necessarily the biggest of the big guys head on over to West Virginia quite yet. You have to think that they're trying to be able to, shall we say, extract as many dollars as humanly possible. That's just this day and age in college basketball, but that's it for West Virginia. Russ Hoge, he's been able to do a nice job of being able to bring in quite a few guys already. Brandon Lawrenton, who's right around 6'8" when he popped threes, he was actually very good. He's also joined Jasper Floyd, heading on over to West Virginia. They've already landed Jackson Fields, who's coming on over from Troy. Harlan Obioa, who is a true 7-footer over at UNC Wilmington, is coming into the fold as well. So far so good for Mr. Russ, so we'll see what he's able to bring in. Additionally, you've got Josh Reed, who was over at Cincinnati this last season, was averaging about 5 points, 2.5 rebounds per game as a 6'7", a little bit of a combo player, not an amazing three-point shooter, but heading on over to Penn State, was part of a defense-oriented Cincinnati team. He's going to be in a little bit more of an up-tempo system, but I said, I do think that that's going to be solid for them, and I was mentioning this with Arkansas as well. They are going to be getting Nick Pringle into the fold as well, so Arkansas, pair of nice pickups with Pringle along with Malik Ewan on Tuesday, with Pringle, 9.5 points, 6 boards at 6'10". He's going to be able to bring this team a little bit of rough and tumble as well, so a lot of size being added by Arkansas here over the last 48 or so hours. Latrell Davis, who he was very good at San Jose State this past season, 11 points, about 1.7 assists per contest. In conference play, he shot well north of 40% for three-point range overall for the season, shot 38% for three. He's heading on over to San Diego State. Was very clear that San Diego State need to address the outside shooting from a season ago. That was a little bit shaky, to say the least, and he played over there for a group in San Jose State that, if you look at the overall efficiency numbers, you're not going to be wowed by their defense, but was still always a tough out in the Mountain West. And additionally, you've got Magoon Gwath, who's going to be returning to San Diego State as a true 7-footer. That's big for them. Sean Newman Jr. is one of the top facilitators in all of college basketball, also landing on over to San Diego State. So they're building themselves a nice roster right now. Demetrius Lilly, he's decided that he's going to be going down a level. He was solid at LaSalle this last season. 7.5 points, 6 rebounds per contest. Is able to shoot a little bit from 3, but that's not necessarily his forte. He's going to be heading to Binghamton. Binghamton lost Grant Walsh, who was a double-double machine this last season. For them to be able to get this sort of a find, I think it's very big for them. You would not expect a player like that to be heading on over to Binghamton, so that's a good pickup for them. This is a solid pickup as well. Vincent Brady, he has decided that he is going to be heading to High Point. I know that our good friend Rocco Miller pointed this out to me last offseason, the fact that High Point, they've got some money to spend. Even though they do lose their coach in the offseason, they have a little bit of a coaching regime change. They're still able to hook in these rock-solid guys. As over at Missouri State, Vincent Brady averaged 13.5 points per game last season. He shot 38% from three-point range, and he shot quite a few threes. I think that this is going to be a really nice pickup for them. And for High Point, they're already retaining Jace Johnson, who he was a really good sharpshooter for them this past season. Scotty Washington, who was over at CSUN this past season, along Jaden Young, who was over at Virginia Tech. They're joining High Point as well. Cameron Fletcher apparently is going to be in on High Point as well, a guy that was just all sorts of banged up over at Xavier this past season. So High Point, they're putting together that NIL bag. They've got a lot of guys that are going to be coming in, and I do like what they're building over there. I do like this one as well, is the fact that you've got the Minnesota Morehead State coach who comes on over to Denver, and he's bringing with him Logan Kinsey. Kinsey, he was able to average 14.5 points, a little bit over 5 boards per contest, shot 38% from three-point range. He was a big reason why they were able to have success, and I think that this is going to be interesting to see how this plays out moving forward, as the man that is going to be heading things up, Tim Brigstetter. He had a lot of success the last few seasons over at Minnesota State Morehead. He was averaging 25 plus wins a season, and we've seen these guys just be rock solid hires over the last few seasons, and I think that you've got another 1 year. I think that this is a good pickup for Dayton. Dayton went with a lot of splash in the offseason last year with the likes of Zed Key, along with Posh Alexander, guys that did not fit. I think that Jordan Durcock, who's coming on over, is going to be able to be a fit. At Rutgers last season, didn't have amazing numbers, 5.5 points, right around about 3 boards per contest. He's not going to be a guy that just explodes from three-point range, but he was the All-NEC Defensive Player of the Year 2 seasons ago when he was over at Merrimack for the Old Merrymen. 17 points, 6 boards, 4 assists, 2 steals per contest that season for one of the most tough and, shall we say, rugged defenses in all of college basketball in terms of being able to generate turnovers. So I think that he is a very good pickup for them. You've got also a very nice pickup here with the fact that Niles Malkowski has decided that he is going to be going to Wofford. This was a man that was able to average about 9.2 points per contest, according to Jeff Borzel of ESPN. Over the last 6 games, shot 37% from three-point range. He really burst onto the scene late. Did not see a lot of minutes up until the Crown Invitational. When he was out there in the Crown, he was able to show his worth, and now he gets to wear the crown with a little bit more NIL bag for him. So we shall see what he's going to be able to do moving forward, and we shall see moving forward what we're going to be able to get out of Mike James. He was over at NC State this last season, missed the entirety of the season due to injury. 2 seasons ago over at Louisville, was a solid player. 12.5 points, 5 boards, steal and half per contest. Capable of being a solid 3-point shooter. Not a guy that's going to shoot like 40% from 3-point range or anything like that, but I think that this is a good pickup for Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt was able to do a nice job defensively last season in terms of being able to generate turnovers, but they weren't necessarily great at being able to guard the arc. He should be able to help out with that, along with Frankie Collins, who's coming on over from TCU. They pick up Mason Nicholson, who was at Jacksonville State, to be able to give you a little bit down low along Jalen Washington. So far, so good from Vanderbilt. We recall what they were able to do last season with having a team essentially full of transfers, be able to have the production that they did. So I do think that this is going to be something that works once again for them, and this is going to be one that they're going to be looking to have where KT Shaw, he was over at Maryland Eastern Shore this last season. 18 points, 6 boards, 3 assists per contest after starting his career at Division II Winston-Salem State. He's decided that he's going to be going to Old Dominion now. For Old Dominion, this does not short out the fact that they had bad 3-point shooting last season, as Mr. Shaw is not necessarily going to light you up from 3-point range. That said, He should be able to do a nice job of being able to facilitate for an offense that they were all sorts of sloppy last season. Jared Turner, who was at Northeastern last year, is really the lone other transfer that Old Dominion has to this point, so we'll see how else they're going to be able to fill out this roster, but that's a nice first step for them. I do like that pickup, and I do like this as well. The fact that you have Jahari Long heading on over to George Mason, just another one of those guys that over at Maryland was not able to see a lot of minutes. If you were outside that starting five, it was SOL. Sorry, out of luck for you. 4.5 points per contest this last season, and I do think that he's going to be able to do a really good job with this George Mason team that has been able to add a lot of talent. They decided to beef up down low. Dola Adbayo coming out over from Mount St. Mary's. Masai Troutman was banged up this past season at Northeastern, but he's a guy that's able to pop it from 3-point range. Jahari Hill, he was a nice go-to scorer, the number one scorer for Ball State this last season, so do like that. And you've got a pair of guys that are going to be adding on over to Ole Miss. AJ Storr along Corin Johnson. For Mr. Johnson this last season, just wasn't able to necessarily see a lot of consistency in general because he was dealing with the injury. When he was over at Washington 2 seasons ago, he was the 6th man of the year in that conference, 11 points per contest, a relatively solid 3-point shooter, but he played in 2 games last season over at Louisville, so we'll see what he's going to be able to do coming off of injury. And for AJ Storr, 2 seasons ago over at Wisconsin, wasn't an efficient scorer, but a good score at 17 points per contest, was not a fit with Kansas. He averaged about 6 points per contest. If there's a guy that's going to be able to get the most out of him, it's Chris Beard over at Ole Miss. Ole Miss, I think, just has a way of being able to get the best out of guards, and I think that they're going to be able to do so in both of these cases. I think that the big question mark for Johnson at this point, how close to 100% is he going to be? But I do think that these are 2 relatively solid pickups for an Ole Miss team that prior to this, their lone pickup was really Corey Chest, who's relatively rock solid down low, but you tell that they needed a little bit of guard play. They did a very good job of being able to address that. This is something that is being addressed as well. Drayton Jones, he is going to be heading on over to Butler, and for Butler, they needed a little bit more down low last season. For Jones, he was able to provide 1.7 blocks, 13 points, 5.5 rebounds per game, so I think that he's going to be a good pickup for a Butler team that, again, they just didn't have a lot down low, so that's pretty rock solid. Jared Colonel, he was over at Northwestern State this last season, one of the better shot blockers in all of college basketball, 2.2 blocks, 5.5 boards, 5 points per game. He has decided that he is going to be going to Stone Cold Stephen F. Austin, and Stone Cold Stephen F. Austin, well, they played some stone cold, rock solid defense, and boy, did they play no offense whatsoever. So Colonel's going to be able to fit quite well in over there because his offensive game leaves a little bit of something to be desired. Really, the lone transfer that you've got for Stone Cold Stephen F. Austin right now. We'll see if there's going to be a little bit more moving forward, but that's a nice first step for them. And what is always a nice step is to step up and just listen to this podcast. We've got you guys covered every single day in all that is happening in college basketball right now. We're going to be keeping up with all the wild and craziness in college basketball with the transfer portal as I just refreshed 2,189 guys in the transfer portal. I'll do my best to be able to keep it all straight with you guys and try to make this the most successful betting season ever here in the 2025-26 campaign. And if you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Go Seeps, you're able to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of 2 ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at GNet_81. Keep in mind, LRCM, name does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. And I'll be with you guys every single day on this podcast, regular season and off season. And additionally, big thanks to Mike Randle, who does great work over at FDN Network, FDN Bets, for joining me in last segment. And I'll be with you guys every single day, regular season and off season on this podcast. So I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.